Gets away from Kante, plays down the line for Suarez. 98 team of the year, Suarez.
He's a big chance.
Ramos.
Suarez, what's he going to do? Tries to feed it back. Is that going to come to Ronaldo? Just trying to get a foot on that, maybe. Bullet now, the man that Bullock loves. Half turn there from Torres. Vieira, back to Suarez on the finesse, and there we have it. The Bullock is in London. He turns around, he celebrates. The Bullock, he had a plan, and he's performed it.
You're listening to the Fut Champions Podcast with Richard and Brandon.
What is going on? Welcome back to the Fut Champions Podcast for another episode, week 6. We're on now. We're back from the new year. Big happy new year to all our listeners. Hope you had a lovely Christmas period with family and friends. We're back to podcast duty. We're back to business. 2018 for the FIFA eSports world. And of course, next to me is that man, Richard Buckley. He had to go solo when I was in Paris a few weeks ago, but he's back after the Christmas break. Richard Buckley, hello.
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad, Brandon. Thank you for the kind words on the introduction. It were a solo effort before Christmas, but I was happy with how it came out in the end with Aggie. Big thank you to him once again for coming in and stepping in. But the boys are back together, as you could say, because it's the trio are back, Brandon.
They are. The three amigos are back. Obviously, Colin is joining us. Colin, hello.
Hey guys, good to be back. Thought you guys did some really good work while I was gone. I really enjoyed the AGA podcast, and then I got a little scared, to be honest. FootWiz Dan was doing a pretty good job. So
obviously, Colin is another pundit on the show. Obviously, FNATIC / Roma eSports manager, looks after the Rocket League kind of stuff over there as well. Where have you been? You've been to China. You've been around a little bit.
Yeah, China. So we went to China for the Tencent launch of Rocket League, which was really fun. They were launching the game fully in China, so we got to go over there for 3 or 4 days, kind of like show Rocket League to the Chinese public and then play a little show match over there. And then we came back and had Lithuania for the Strawberry Fields Cup, which was on last year as well. I think this is the 3rd edition, but it's a charity tournament, and so we went down there and there was a couple other clubs and we competed against them. And it was more of a more relaxed environment. It was definitely a different type of tournament because we were just playing for basically charity money to be able to give to different charities. But it was a really good cause, and it was a really entertaining tournament. Actually, it was like some of the best goals I've ever seen in competitive FIFA were scored there. So.
And of course, if you do want to get involved with the show, hashtag Fut Champs Pod. This week, obviously, it's the first podcast in 2018. We're going to recap basically the year of FIFA eSports. You could say the year that, yes, there's always been a few tournaments, but last year was really the year when EA took a step forward. They made a few decisions. They brought in tournaments. The Fut Champs came alive then. Obviously, the Fut Champs podcast came alive in 2017 as well. But we're joined with a guest, Richard, aren't we? We're always joined with a top 100 pro, or at least a pro FIFA player in the scene. Who have we got on this week, Richard?
We've got the one and only Roma Poacher. We've got a Roma theme going on. We've got the manager and we've got one of their star players. And just got in by the skin of your teeth. I want to start right there. Tell me about the emotion that you're feeling, Poacher, when you got the call to say that you'd have made it into that top 64.
Wow, obviously it's pretty emotional, isn't it? Coming 67th on the nick of my skin. I needed three people to drop out, didn't I? So I was pretty lucky, but at the same time I thought surely 3 people have got to drop out since I'm not sure if you knew, but last year I think it was 16 people who qualified, and I'm pretty sure people who were coming 20th were qualifying. So just from that I kind of already knew that I had a really big chance, but to actually get in and get the email, it feels really good.
So, obviously, if you didn't know, obviously, Colin is Poacher's manager, so he's probably have to be careful what he says this week, as the big boss in here as well. But, Colin, a few words to add on that. I know when we saw it at first, he finished 67th, we said, there's a big chance that you can still finish in that top 64 because, there will be a few people out there that will have cheated and stuff like that. And, there's hats off to EA for taking the time, researching it, and obviously letting Poacher back into the mix.
Yeah, no, I think the emotions after finishing 67th, especially because that night it was like watching the election in a way, almost when you're just like watching the numbers tick down. And it ended up being all the Americas players that hadn't finished their games that ended up putting us in that position. But I think we were fairly confident, but there's always that chance, right? And, that's why I think we tried to be cautiously optimistic, not get our hopes up too much. But yeah, once we got the email, I think it was more of just like a sense of relief of thank God we're going, because I think coming that close and not qualifying would be worse than, coming 100th or something and not qualifying just because of, the tension.
And obviously, looking at 2018, Sam, what's your thoughts on the tournament breakdown this year? It looks like it's getting bigger, it's growing even bigger. FIFA eSports as itself. Are you excited now that you're in the mix?
Yeah, definitely. Like last year in FIFA 17, I didn't really qualify for that many of the top events. So this year I'm hoping to bring that back, since that's what I did in FIFA 15 and 16. So in FIFA 18, I just kind of want to get back into the mix.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong,
see the schedule.
You are 18, aren't you? Correct?
Yeah.
Because I remember when you really came into the scene, obviously you were XL before. Obviously you're still in the mix now of Painter, and Shane is there as well, I think. But, just go back to that a little bit. You were this kind of new boy in the scene. You're a little bit younger than the other players, but you were known for, you still are today, for the skills you use, the fantastic dribbler you are on the ball. What was that whirlwind? Right, take me back to when you first got that call about potentially joining Roma.
Oh, it was crazy, I'm pretty sure it wasn't like a thing where I got the email and it was like a certain thing. It was always like a maybe, and we're always a bit optimistic when we first got the chance for it to actually happen. But for it to actually go through and stuff, it's actually crazy. And when I was in Rome, it's just an unbelievable experience.
And I want to jump back to last year. You were at a couple of the events, I believe the Paris Regionals and then the Club World Cup. I'll try and get your perspective on it, and then Colin's perspective, because I imagine there'll be similar but a couple of differences in between. At the Club World Cup, you were top of the table going into that last game, and then I think you went out on goal difference, if I remember. What were it like that 16 minutes of FIFA? We'll go Colin first, and then Sam.
Well, it was interesting because he played some of the best FIFA of last year in that tournament. And so we felt pretty good going into the final game. Actually, 3 different games had to go a specific way for us to not make it to the knockouts, and all 3 of those things happened. So it was frustrating because we felt like we had done enough to make it. Because I think if we would have finished on the same amount of points in the other group, we would have finished top of the table. So it was a really tough event. We had the likes of Tim Lotka, Erhano, Rafsu, a lot of the top pros from around the world in our group. So it definitely wasn't an easy tournament. And I think we left feeling good. I don't think we were necessarily super disappointed about the overall performance, but going out in that fashion is never easy to take.
And Sam, how did you make of it as well?
Well, obviously it's disappointing because I needed, going into my last game, I was against Rafsu, so I needed to not lose 2-0 basically. If I didn't lose 2-0, I would have been fine. So first of all, I went into the game, and then Colin's not going to be happy with me saying this, but some of his goals were a bit questionable. So I think he got like an own goal. He RB and A'd it across the box, and my player took a huge touch into my own net. So he was 1-0 up from that, and then he scored from 40 yards, which meant 2-0 down, I would have been out. So I went all out and ended up losing 4-0. And it's just, it's heartbreaking, isn't it, to not go through.
You spoke there about the questionable goal, and it's just sparked another thought in my head. Everybody opinion, and I'm sure people have got opinions on Twitter as well on this. Do you think that potential match fixing could be a thing going forward, or it has been in the past with the amount of money on the line? For example, if two friends are in different groups and one person needs a draw and both players will go through, but because you've got to think it's not happened currently in real football, but back in the past with some of the Serie A stories that you hear coming out with Juventus and everything like that. Do you think that could be something that EA need to look out for?
I mean, obviously it's a little bit spectacle, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of money on the line, so there's always that chance that that's going to happen, and especially if like two teammates are in the same group, and they need an extra point or something. I don't see why they wouldn't give them the point. So yeah, they do need to be a little bit wary of it, but I don't think it will become like a huge problem.
They have referees at events now, so I think they have people put in place that are like there to kind of like look out for that kind of stuff. But it's actually funny you say that, because I've been speaking at a lot of conferences recently, and one of the conferences I was at, one of the questions I got from the crowd was about that, and about, she was actually from like the gambling commission in Vegas, and she was like worried about putting FIFA on their betting card, essentially, because they were like worried about that kind of match fixing and about how hard it is to actually detect if someone's cheating or not. Yeah. So I think it's a concern that isn't just within the FIFA community, but it's without the gambling community as well, because they realize how much potential eSports has, and FIFA I think is one of the fastest scaling eSports. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how EA kind of like further develops the kind of regulations around that kind of stuff.
Well, also it's so easy to, if you weren't a FIFA fan, it's so easy to be able to watch and know if your team's winning or not. Some games like Call of Duty, Dota, sometimes if you're watching it, it's quite hard to see like what's happening on the screen. On FIFA, it's just like you are watching virtual football. So if I bet on Poacher to win and I see that the Roma players just scored a goal, I know that I'm winning my bet.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to bring into esports. I don't know whether it brings more attention to FIFA. Yes, that'll be good, but obviously there are the risks next to it, as you said, Richard. And hopefully it will be safe and it will be no risk gambling there. But obviously we wanted to recap 2017 big moments. I want to go round to each person in here. For me, some of the standout moments, I'm sure, apologies if I nick anyone's as well. Just little things like, Shells coming onto the scene. I remember me and Richard were there. We did one game of commentating there, and that was our kind of big stage as well. And Shells, that was his big stage as well, when he won $80,000, and he was out of nowhere really. Obviously, he was an NBA player as well. That was one of my standout moments. Obviously, Gorilla taking the crown, being the champion, and at the same time picking up UK Esports Player of the Year as well, which talks absolute volumes of FIFA. To pick up that award at the Esports Industry Awards. I don't know about you, Richard. What other kind of moments stand out for you?
I think the Gorilla, not only the Gorilla story at FIWC, but the Sean Allen story as well, of him the year before bottling it at the biggest stage, when he should have gone on to win that grand final, and then coaching Spencer this year, 2017, and not only coaching him, but I think he actually, sometimes with coaching, I'm sure, Poacher, you can have a word on this as well, because you did coach a man when he represented Roma at the grand final as well. It's very hard to get your person to do something, because you're not going to tell him how to play the game, because he knows exactly what to do. Like, he's a FIFA player, he's a pro as well, but I think it's just like the mental thing, like keeping him calm, or when he scores a goal, hyping him up. And one of the best moments for me were when Gorilla scored that beautiful goal where he backheeled it and then he finished it. And then I just remember Sean Allen, beautiful spinny. That is beautiful. So the whole Sean Allen story, Gorilla story at FIWC, probably the standout for me.
And speaking of the coaching thing, we'll come on to that after. Colin, obviously, what did you make of 2017?
I think we're going to look back at 2017 and see it as kind of possibly one of the most important years for FIFA as an esport, because we never seen investment at this level from EA especially. And I think if you look around at some of the most successful esports, what has made them successful has been, support from the developers. And, with Valve and CS and Riot and League of Legends, it's been them that have kind of made esports happen. And for us, I think we're trying to do that now with EA finally putting the support behind it, and I think they're only scaling it more and more every year. And I think people are being a little impatient with EA in 2018 and with FIFA 18 in the competitive scene, but there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and I think the size of that competitive team is just going to keep growing. But yeah, 2017 was definitely massive. We saw production on a scale that we hadn't seen before when it comes to events. We've seen a lot of infrastructure come into the scene that wasn't there before, i.e., managers and coaches and, pretty much every pro player now has some kind of entourage coming with them to events, whether it's content people or it's their management or, even their player agents or things like that. So it's becoming much more developed, and I think as we become more developed and kind of grow our profile, we're just going to be taken more seriously in the esports community moving forward. And I think 2017 was a big part of making that happen.
And I'm sure, Poach, you can add it as well. Is it fair to say that FIFA, until maybe last year, was looked upon as an esport that wasn't maybe as big or didn't really have that much of an impact?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the FIFA 16 tournaments, the highest prize pool was the FIWC, which was $20,000.
Yeah.
And just to think that 2017 was the first year EA properly backed it, I see it as a massive success. And
do you see as well the fact of you were a big Gfinity player, and that's kind of where you kind of profiled yourself really well there. I remember being an admin on the site. The Play Like a Legend event was only $3,000 prize pools. Do you remember what I mean? And
yeah.
Obviously you said $20,000 for FIWC, and then last year they go and put $200,000 on the prize pool. What kind of motivation does that give you as a FIFA player?
Well, like I said, in FIFA 16 there was hardly anything going on, so around that time you couldn't make a career out of FIFA. I mean, you probably could if you won the FIWC, but apart from that, you couldn't do it because there wasn't enough backing from EA. There wasn't enough money in prize pools. So to think now you can actually make a career out of it throughout FIFA 17, it's just crazy, and I think it's just a massive development for the esport.
Speaking of 2017 in general, I'd go to Colin's opinion probably first. It seems to be the year of people, I think because it's gone to a competitive level, a lot of people on Twitter especially, and we saw it towards the back end of last year with the whole hashtag fix FIFA, and especially with the pros coming out and saying this is wrong, this is right. As a manager and a coach and someone who oversees their players, what would you say to these pro players who maybe aren't signed on how to address the issues, if they've got any, in the game? Because I think it's one thing to say like your opinion on Twitter, but to just straight away bash the game, or it doesn't put you in good stead going forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles when you, first of all, when you tweet about the game, two, when you trash the game on Twitter, and I don't care if it deserves it. And Sam can probably speak to this as well, but I think we're really good at making sure that we're constructive with our criticism, and I think that's one of the biggest pieces is saying, oh, this game is bad, or being like, oh, I had 25 shots in this game and I only scored 2 goals, and it's like, well, improve your finishing then, and it just gets a little bit frustrating because sometimes I feel like they come off as excuses, and even if it's not an excuse, it comes off as an excuse, and that doesn't look good to anybody. It doesn't look good to your fans. It doesn't look good to your organization. It doesn't look to any people that are possibly coming in to recruit you. And so it's kind of, I think pros are still trying to figure out, and I think some of them have already figured it out, but some are still figuring it out, that they're public figures now. They're athletes. They're at the highest level of their sport, and to be taken seriously by their organizations, they can't publicly complain. It's like Nathan Redmond coming out and complaining about the refs on Twitter. Like you just can't do that kind of stuff, and it doesn't put you in a good standing with EA. Like there's a reason that we've been able to have the opportunities that we've had with EA and go out to these different events and stuff like that. And it's because we're very constructive with our criticism, and we like to give positive feedback, but also give them new ideas and different things like that. So if you do have feedback, there's always ways you can contact people. Rob's mentions are always open, and he does read everything, and all of the guys read everything, and they care about feedback. But if you're the guy that's on there tweeting once every 2 or 3 days about how horrible the game is, because at the end of the day, like as a manager, like the quality of the current game isn't necessarily my number one priority. I think it's really short-term thinking to say, oh, this current patch of this one FIFA, I'm going to quit FIFA because of that. It's like,
If you like what you're hearing, why not subscribe? Just go to @Fut Champions Pod on Twitter, drop a follow, and then you'll find all your subscription options in the pinned tweet.
no, I mean, what you should be looking at is the long-term future of this esport, and if it's worth it for you long-term. Because if you're not enjoying your FIFA right now, well, just wait 6 months or wait 3 months until the next patch comes out, or wait until next year when the new game comes out. Like everyone's going to have their time. If you're a top-level player, everyone's going to have their time to shine at a certain event or during a certain FIFA. So it's about patience and about being constructive when you're coming back to EA with this kind of stuff.
I think it's very interesting you say about the game in general. Like sometimes I think we forget how, especially as pros, how privileged they are, because it is 95% it's the exact same game that you played the year before. Like there's different changes in the mechanics and how the players move, but it's the same buttons, it's the same game. If you look at Call of Duty, those Call of Duty pros have had to sit through boots on the ground Call of Duty where they're completely familiar, and then you've got people jetpacking in the sky above you for like 3 years, and of course the players complained and they made it very vocal, but they still carried on playing the game to the highest level. And it not only do the players carry on playing, but it enables new people to come into the scene. Like this year with the top 64, overall we've seen new pros come into the scene that we didn't see over the last couple of years, because like they've had the chance to play this year, and this version of FIFA 18 suits them better. So I like it.
Yeah, imagine if this was League of Legends or Dota, imagine someone coming in and downgrading Ronaldo from a 94 to a 91. Like, that's what League of Legends and Dota pros have to deal with. Like, different characters and heroes get nerfed and buffed all the time. So, I think the FIFA pros have it pretty easy for the most part, Like, they have 12 months where it's like, here's your pool of players.
For example,
right?
The best gun on Call of Duty, I played quite a lot in Black Ops 3, was the M8, the 4-burst assault rifle. Imagine Cristiano Ronaldo, because the M8's overpowered and every single person uses Ronaldo. Imagine Ronaldo just got like reduced to an 83 rated. Like, they'd be outraw. They'd be absolute outraw.
Yeah. I do get your points, but as a pro myself, I have to disagree with some of them. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Go on.
Obviously, I feel like there's pros who are just gonna complain no matter what state of the game is. I think there's always gonna be people who do complain. But when there's issues in the game, which have been there for absolutely years, and we're in 2018, and there's still delay. Like, I'm sorry, but come on, we've had it since FIFA 15, and I just feel like when it's been 3 years and it's such a simple issue that hasn't been sorted.
Well, you say it's such a simple issue, though. Like, is it really that simple then if they haven't fixed it? It's tough for them because it's
which
well, yeah, because FIFA's what is it? The engine in FIFA is much different than in Call of Duty or League of Legends or any of these other esport titles, and I think it's much harder for them to balance the game. And we've spoken about this before about how the game is just now, because just now it's becoming esports focused, that before delay probably wasn't one of their main things to worry about. It was more so like making the game look as similar to real football as possible. But now that we're headed in an esports direction, now they're having to scale the game more from a realistic sense to probably an esports centered sense. So the game is more balanced for competitive. And I think we're still in the phases of them trying to get the game to where they want it to be. And I think we're still in a transitional year, and we might not have a truly really good esports title until 2020. But it's about sticking around until then and trusting that EA, cares enough to really make this happen, because they're not going to drop millions and millions and millions of dollars on these different prize pools if they don't believe that this is going to end up working.
Yeah, no, I agree with that point. But it is frustrating when you do see the first patch of FIFA 18, which it was the best game there ever was, and then they patch it. And then instead of bringing the game back when people complain, they just patch it and patch it and patch it and just keep on making the game worse. And I feel like they don't help themselves.
So would you enjoy, as a pro, if the game that got released, for example, if you could play that, if that version of the game was still on Fut Champions and it was the day one patch, but every other game mode on the game was updated? Because there'd have been bugs in that first patch that would have had to get changed, surely.
I feel like what they should do is they should patch it, but keep the gameplay, but until they patch it.
So how did you? Obviously, let's go back to September. We've talked to a lot of pros about this, and we've even talked about it as well. Different patches and stuff. So collectively, you're saying at the beginning of the game, you were the happiest you could be.
Yeah, definitely. There was hardly any delay, I don't think. Maybe there was some in some games, not really too sure, but definitely. I think it required more skill as well.
Did you find that there was a lot of? I know it's Ultimate Team, and there's always going to be high scoring, but especially back then, I felt like there was, especially looking at some of your results that you were pulling through, there was goals going everywhere, even in your own goal.
Yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, with FIFA as an esport, you have to kind of think: do you want the game realistic? Or do you want it better for esports? Do you want there to be more of a skill gap? And I feel like EA are trying to cater towards the two groups of people, whereas they just need to cater to one. So obviously making the game more realistic would be buffing the AI, making it harder to score. But if there is, basically every game being 7-6, that requires more skill, in my opinion. That requires more skill to score goals rather than to defend.
It's also more entertaining for a crowd, to watch.
In your opinion, would you say there is a skill gap or there isn't at the minute?
I mean, there definitely is. There always will be. Yeah. But the game before the patches had a massive skill gap compared to what it is now. Because,
it's very fresh in my mind. Yesterday I played Zelonius for Footwiz.
Yeah.
And he beat me 4-0. And, he dominated the game from start to finish. And, he's a very good pro. And, I don't say I'm amazing at the game, but I'm fairly good. And, he dominated me. Whereas when you watch some of the pros games, I think is it because everyone's at this similar sort of level and you can't really get any better? You've hit your peak now almost. There's a glass ceiling on the game, and where all the pros are at the top, and it's just whoever's maybe got better luck on that day.
I see your point, but when I start to think with that kind of point of view, I start to think, well, there must be another level, surely, since there's Gorilla and Rocky winning these consistent tournaments.
But then I see as well, I think Epsilon Fully said it as well. Do you think this year there's a big mental side to the game, or obviously I think there's always been a mental side to any sport, any esport, but especially this year, do you think there's that mental side to the game that you need to be mentally strong?
Yeah, definitely. It's not that important for me, but I've never really had an issue with it. That's the thing. So it kind of just depends where your head's at.
No, I mean, I think going into the coaching side though. I think that you've found this year especially, and Zima and Nico both found that having someone there with you at events is definitely a big boon, even mentally, because like you guys said before, I'm not going to tell them how to play FIFA, but I can help them kind of maybe understand the situation they're in, whether it's if you lose 2-1, you go through, but if you lose 3-2, then you go through, situations like that, making sure that they're informed, and then maybe as well just calming them down or something. If they concede 2 in the first 20 minutes, then you can go in and be like, calm down, like you can come back from this and just play your game. So stuff like that I think is a big help, and that definitely comes on to the mental side of things.
Which interests me, and obviously me and Richard have been lucky enough to be, and so have you, Colin, to be at a number of tournaments, and we see friends and family sometimes step into that coaching role, but more importantly when you see pros step into that coaching role. I'm sure you can add a few points to this, Sam, but as two kind of both ways, you could say, as a player playing the game with a coach behind you or a friend, what do you expect from them, and what would a coach expect from the play? What kind of feedback is it going? Is it kind of trying to keep you calm when maybe you're trying to hold out a game, or if you're trying to get a comeback, is it give you a bit of hype when you score a goal? What are the kind of key things you need?
I feel like it depends on the player. So with a man, it was kind of like making sure he was focused and making sure that he wouldn't kind of like change any parts of his game when he didn't need to, and then changing parts of his game when he did need to. So for example, when I was at FIWC with him, he changed his team width from 50 to 45 for no reason when he was playing really well, and I said to him, why are you doing that for? So he obviously changed it back, but if I wasn't that, I think he would have changed it to 45, and I'm not quite sure why he would do that. Whereas for me personally, I tend to kind of like drift off in games, so I'll score a goal, and even with like the kickoff glitch being in now, in previous years I'd kind of like drift off from kickoff and concede from kickoff. So for me, it would kind of just being reminded to defend from the kickoff, like kind of like keep me focused, and also hyping me up as well. I think that's a massive thing as well, just to keep your focus, keep your mentality straight.
I think as well with this year, I'm sure Rich can come in as well. Both as casual players, there's been a number of times when I've been 2 or 3-0 up, and I thought, I've won this game, and you kind of go on, cruise control mode. Yeah, you switch off, you sit back a bit. Next thing you've conceded 1 or 2, then your mindset starts to change. I think this FIFA, especially as a pro, you can probably say, Sam, you need to be concentrated for every single minute in that game.
Yeah, and that's what I think Gorilla's so good at it. He's 3-0 up, but he keeps going, and for me that's a problem I have, because I go up 3-0 in Fut Champs and I start doing rainbow flicks and I just kind of like drift off again.
Yeah.
Whereas Gorilla, he keeps focus, and that's something I need to work on myself.
Yeah, I think as well, speaking of the coaching role, I think some of the very best players that we've seen do well this year have all had solid coaches behind them. You're looking at Rocky in Berlin. He had Brian there with him all the way pretty much. Another experienced pro who's been there and done it. And then at FIWC, as we spoke about earlier, with Sean Allen behind Gorilla. So I think we are going to see more coaches coming in to the game, and I think we're going to see maybe even ex-pros stepping into that as well, where they can give their experience and just a little bit more peace of mind to the players when they're in the hype zone.
Yeah, I mean, when it's so tight at the top level as it is, you always need that extra push, don't you?
Yeah,
and that could be the difference.
You'll be looking for any advantage that you can potentially get over your opponent.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit about obviously your teammates. Obviously Roma, Inter. I think you say Zimmer, or I that's probably the correct saying for it. I say Zimmy. Obviously a big player in Sweden, player in Italy as well. How is it important to have supportive teammates around you?
Well, it's funny actually. So we were in Paris for ESWC. Neither of us made it, unfortunately, but we were there for Fut Champions as well. So we were all playing in the same room. It was me, our editor, Asker, and Zimmer. I think Nico had his own room, but it was us three in the same room. And there was points in Fut Champions where I'd concede in the 90th minute, so I'd be drawing, and then they'd be like behind me, like cheering me on, and then I'd score from kickoff because of that. So I feel like that kind of thing helps a lot.
And also a point to make as well. You've played a few games. Obviously, we've seen it a little bit with the hashtag HQ. Obviously, And FutWiz announced today they've just got themselves a HQ as well for their gamers to play in and play their Fut Champs. Obviously FNATIC have got a bunker as well in London, and he did play some of your Fut Champs games there in November there. How important was it to play, not with just good internet, but obviously on a good monitor in your own space? How important would you say, HQs or gaming areas down the line?
I feel like it's a mental thing, but it definitely helps me in play my better game. So when I'm playing at home, it's kind of like I'm sleeping where I'm playing, whereas when I'm in London, I sleep in an apartment or whatever, and then I walk and work
rather than going to work.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that kind of thing helps me a lot because it kind of differentiates where you're at. So from that point, that's where it helps me. Not necessarily the internet or the monitor, but just being in a different setup just helps me.
And you, Brandon, there spoke about your teammates on the Roma roster. Colin, what's the as an owner and a manager, if you saw a player, how long would it take for that process to go through from the first discussions to when you can actually sign them? Because I imagine it's a lot longer than a lot of people think it is.
Yeah, it kind of depends, because when we first started, when the team was first kind of put together, it was a very, very long process, of first contact. From first contact to kind of when the team was announced, I'd probably say it was a 3-month process from start to finish. And that, was even, I think Insa and Poacher were kind of the two guys that we had locked in from the beginning, but then finding Amon, from first contact to signing was a week, Wow. So it really just depends on the situation, depends on, if there's a player that you really want and, you want to go out and get him, and maybe there's another team coming for him, or there's an event that's about to happen that he's going to, or there's a certain situation. Depending on the situation, you can either play it long term or short term. Because I have players that I've had my eyes on for 9 months, that we're looking to try and speak to maybe in the future. But there's also, if a player comes available tomorrow, say Gorilla comes available tomorrow and wants to play for Roma, obviously we would have to look at that opportunity, right? So there's always, you just have to be aware of as well as a manager, kind of have to be aware of when people's contracts end, who's actually interested in playing for you, because there's some people that might be Roma fans that I'm not even aware are Roma fans, right? That are pros that might want to play for us in the future. So, it kind of depends. Because some of the Amon process was a very short one, just because of kind of how fast everything happened. But when we first started the program, it can take 3 months. It can take all the way up to 9 months, even a year. If a player's in a contract already, and say you found a guy, you're like, this is our guy, but he's in a 1-year contract, then you might have to wait until that's up. So,
do you see there being a potential? I know with the Premier League, especially deadline day, it's a huge event. And a lot of players, a lot of fans know when players' contracts are coming up. Do you see that there being a potential, a big FIFA Pro deadline day where all the different clubs can come in, you can sign other players? Because at the minute it seems everything goes behind closed doors.
If you like what you're hearing, why not subscribe? Just go to @FutChampionsPod on Twitter, drop a follow, and then you'll find all your subscription options in the pinned tweet.
I think the problem with that is with there being a transfer window or something like that is just there's so many different competitive circuits in FIFA, So you have EA's series, but then you also have the Gfinity series, you have the eDivisi, you have you have domestic leagues, you have international leagues like the Global E League, you have the Gfinity League, you have the EA main competitive series, so you're playing in 4, 5, 6 different events at once. And say if you're locked into a 3 to 4 month deal with Gfinity or something, where you have players locked into roster spots, then you might not even be able, say you want to sell a player, but he's already locked into that roster spot and you can't get him out of there. So I think there's just too many moving pieces. Whereas with football, it's kind of just worrying about your domestic transfer window, and that's kind of what dictates everything. So unless EA was to take a very firm stance on okay, you can only sign players in the summer. And then I think that, it would definitely make things a bit more interesting, because you would have to kind of formulate things around that. But I think the way that we have it right now is really good, because I think there's a lot of organizations and teams, or not a lot, but there are some organizations and teams that are coming into the space, and the players that are joining them are unhappy. And I think if those players had to wait until the summer to get a new contract, that would be really detrimental to those players that are in those situations.
Something that you often see as well is, a player like Sam, someone like Zimmy. There's a number of other players out there as well. A lot of these guys, you can probably agree with it, Colin, as well, that will rush into a contract, you could say, or rush into an organisation early on because obviously it looks fantastic on your CV. They might not get treated the best, and sometimes you have to do that to learn a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that the learning process is pretty tough, especially with, you're having 16, 17, 18-year-olds sign contracts, which is always a dicey situation to be in. So I think, if you're that age and they're not asking to speak to your parents, I think that's immediately a red flag, because they have to be in contact with your parents as well. Like Sam's parents were in contact with us during his signing process, because he was 17 at the time. He wasn't legal to be able to even sign the contract at the time. But I think, getting into an organization early, especially for, I think you're almost seeing like these almost like feeder organizations. Like, I don't want to be rude or anything to like FutWiz or anything, but they're picking up a lot of players that are young and have a lot of potential, but maybe aren't the Rockies or the Timoxes or those types of guys. And so I think it's really valuable for them to get in early, and especially to work with a good organization, like FutWiz, and have a positive experience, and then be able to move on from there and then go to wherever they want to be, or stay with FutWiz long term if that's what they're interested in as well.
At the same time of that as well, obviously FutWiz, even if the player does move on from FutWiz, FutWiz is still giving through the academy as well so many opportunities for a lot of guys to not essentially make a living off the game. They might make a few pound, or just to gain a few more followers, to kind of be more in the public eye. And I think that's really good to see. I'm sure Richard can back me up on that.
Yeah, it's very similar to real life football. You've got a lot of teams who know they're not going to get to the elite level, but they produce unbelievable talent. Southampton comes to mind straight away. The amount of players who have come from Southampton to go on to bigger and better things. But unlike real life, with FIFA, for example, you spoke about FutWiz. We'll go back to FutWiz. Zelonius, he could go on all the way and win the tournament in Barcelona, because it's a one-off tournament, where if he performs on the day, everyone in that top 64, in my opinion, has got a chance to win.
I think it is. It's going to be obviously at a LAN event. Obviously, it's going to be on the eSports edition of the game. It's going to be obviously offline. There's going to be obviously some differences there, because obviously there was, especially last year, I'm sure you could back me up, Richard, as well. There was, especially the FIWC events. There was, some players not happy with, some of the gameplay was a bit laggy, they said.
Yeah, there were a few issues. I think more with not with the game as such, but a lot of people did say I'm not sure if you'll be able to back us up on this, Sam. The eSports version of the game, where everything's unlocked, plays differently to the real life, to the FIFA that you're playing right now. Is that true?
It is frustrating, because you do practice at home on the online gameplay, on like Fut Champions and stuff, and the eSports version is different gameplay. It just is. So to go from that and then to go from the eSports version, you have to adapt.
I think adapting is such a good word to use there as well, Sam, because as much as people haven't been happy through the patches of this game, and Colin, you can come into this as well, all the other esports, when there's change to the game, Richard said it with COD as well, you have to adapt. If you still want to be, in the loop of the FIFA esports, you have to adapt, and I think a number of players have done that well this year.
And I think a number of players have also struggled with it too. I think you're kind of seeing the cream rise to the top in a lot of ways. But I think we can't really say that until, we're getting these first major tournaments coming in, because at the end of the day, it's the lands that matter. It's not, who finishes 280-0. I think that's a great achievement. But at the end of the day, the percentage of players that the percentage of that 280 players that you would actually meet at a LAN is probably like 3%, maybe 5% of the players, and that's probably being generous. So I think what's really going to prove, that these players are at the appropriate level is going to be when they go to Barcelona or they go to a Brussels or something like that and prove themselves against players that are at their similar level, because I've said this multiple times before, but I just don't. Fut Champions isn't the way to prepare for an event, and I've always stayed consistent with that, and I think a lot of other players are too. And I think you've seen that in some players coming out and saying that they're not going to play Fut Champions this month, players that have qualified for Barcelona, because they just don't think it's worth their time. I think it's you see Sam post pretty much like 3, 4, 5 times a week saying any pros or top 100s want games. Yeah. Because that's, at the end of the day, what's going to improve your level is, seeing what works and what doesn't work against the players you're actually going to be playing at an event like Barcelona.
And Rich can back me up on this as well. We'll come on to Sam in a minute, but obviously from watching For the Rings, Richard, how would you say a lot of people have been preparing for Barcelona?
I think a lot of people they're trying to grind the game as much as possible, playing against people of the same level. I was watching Painter the other day playing against a lot of people at his level as well, against other pros. Even if it's not people who haven't qualified in that top 64, just people who constantly finish Elite 1, top 100, that in that sort of bracket of players, in the real upper echelon of FIFA ability, just getting as many games as you can. But as well, on the flip side of that, if I was competing, I'd want to play people who weren't going to be attending the event, because I wouldn't want to give all my tricks away, you could say, before the event.
I'm sure you can come to it, Sam, as well. As Colin said, you've been trying to get as many top 100 players to play against you as possible. As Richard said, do you just play the game as your own play style? Do you hide any plan Bs, plan Cs that you use at a big tournament, or you just, I play my game as usual and I'm just trying to still get better and better?
Well, the thing is with me, I'm quite different to a lot of pros, so I tend to change my game style pretty much every week. So 1 minute I'm all about skills with the 4-on-2-on-2 narrow. Next minute I'm all possession 4-2-3-1. But about the thing giving away my tricks and stuff, I feel like for me, I need to play pros. It's literally a necessity for me to play them, for me to get better. So if I didn't do that, I would get grouped. Whereas if maybe they know a few of my tricks, it's not like I'm definitely going to get grouped kind of thing.
And you see as well, a number of interviews go around after every FIFA tournament, big tournament, saying, how do people get into it? And they do say, you've got to play against the best. And is that such a true statement?
Yeah, it's how I got better. So when I started playing, actually, in FIFA 14, I was just playing Division 1 and I kind of just got bored of that. So I played Gfinity, and I played for 6 months straight in every cup, playing against the top players. Yeah. Because at that stage of FIFA, there wasn't these massive prize pools, so people like Gorilla and all these top level players who are actually pros would play it in every single cup. And that's literally how I learned. I didn't learn from playing bad players. So to actually, you need to play pros. You need to play pros for me. But there are a few exceptions, obviously, being I'm pretty sure Kurt just played the game and that's how he got good.
Say some people maybe have not a natural instinct for it, but obviously maybe take to a certain version of the game a little bit better. But we tweeted back a few days ago saying any questions in for Sam, aka Poacher, who's on the show. First of all, this one comes from Olivier Giroud, obviously not the Olivier Giroud.
Absolute scenes.
Yeah. He said, how do I make opponents make a mistake? And how do I make my game play faster? I don't know if he means just switching settings, or I'm guessing he means, faster passing, faster playing patterns.
I'd definitely say trying to mix up your custom tactics a bit, maybe up in the speed. But for me, it's just playing the game, playing the game, getting used to where your positions are placed. And when I'm playing, I know exactly where each one of my players is going to be, so I can pass before my player even gets the ball. I'm spamming the A button because I know where they're going to be. So if you want to play quicker, you just got to practice and just learn where your players are going to be positioned.
it's a little bit like, painting the picture in your head, isn't it? Like any athlete will do. Guess where the next pass is going to go. Anticipate is probably the best word to use in those examples. Would you say to make your opponent make a mistake, would you say just being in their face, hide press, or?
Well, when I'm playing, I don't play to make a mistake.
Okay.
So when you're playing Fut Champions, for me it's about outdoing your opponent and not kind of like making the most out of their mistakes.
Okay.
So you want to be playing as if they're not going to make a mistake, because the FIFA's all about patterns, and if they can't defend a certain pattern, then you're going to score. So I wouldn't be focusing on your opponent making a mistake. I'd just say learn the patterns which work the best.
Question that I saw on Twitter: what's the best way to try and break someone down who's using the second man press AI defending?
No accelerating, no RT. Literally just moving the left stick and just pressing A, and just watching out for all the runs and stuff he makes. And also using the 1-2. The 1-2 helps a lot. So say he's pushing with his striker and his left wing, for example. The centre back and the right back would be cut off. And if you pass to your right back, you do a 1-2 of your centre back. The right back's going to be running forward, and it's so simple just to pass it back to him. Whereas if you didn't do that, he would have been blocked off. And it's kind of hard to kind of like explain it without showing
pictures,
examples,
yeah.
But that's what I'd go for.
So there's plenty of 1-2 passes.
Yeah.
And one more question from someone called Cal. I'm guessing everyone won't have all the coins in the world. So say, favourite player to use in Weekend League that you can afford to buy with quite a bit of money, then say, give us your little gem you would use as well, maybe at the beginning of the game.
Well, my favourite player in the game is regular Neymar, which is different.
Oh, there you go.
So, honestly, he's so good for me because I love skills. Obviously, you'll know.
Yeah.
I love the flip-flaps. So for me, Neymar, he's probably the best skiller on the game. So he has to be in my team.
Let's just have a talk about going into 2018. Let's talk about, obviously, how the global series is looking so far. Colin, you came in and said you wanted to talk about the global E-leagues, I believe, as well. There's going to be a lot more tournaments this year, isn't there?
Yeah, I think the best thing that we've seen is being able to take part in a lot of these leagues, because obviously, they had the E-League, they had E-Divisi, all these kind of domestic tournaments, but now you're seeing more more international tournaments coming out, and that includes, the Gfinity Elite Series, which, during the off time, our team was announced to be a part of the 10-team kind of franchise system to be a part of Elite Series, which includes Rocket League, FIFA, and Street Fighter. So I think the total prize pool is supposed to be something like £250,000 across all three games, which is, definitely pretty big for FIFA when, our biggest prize pools was $400,000 for FIWC. But it's nice to have something to play every single week to keep the guys kind of fresh for independent events as well. But I think it's just nice to have more consistent competitive play that maybe means a bit more as well, because Gfinity Cups are great, but at the end of the day, like, you're not really playing for much. Because the prize pools aren't much, but when it comes to Elite Series and when it comes to the global E-Leagues, it's nice to have just a place to kind of test your mettle against those top players. So, and I'm hoping to see more of those. But then again, I think it doesn't diminish the importance of the type of tournaments like the Brussels Cup that we went to, or any of the Schalke or the Ajax events that have gone on in the past.
And what's good about that as well is I know that a lot of these events, I think EA have come out and said they need to be open for anyone. Of course, there's going to be a few events where there might be some just invites, obviously like Levante that was on last year, and obviously some other ones as well. But the Gfinity Elite Series, that looks really exciting. I know FNATIC just joined up with that. Again, that's still another door to go via, without really needing to go via Fut Champs.
Yeah, I think it enables anybody really, if you put in the grind and if you are good enough at the game to get yourself a spot for wherever the grand final will be. A lot of people said Fut Champs, they don't like the way Fut Champs is, but I think it's probably easier to qualify this year, FIFA 18, than it was last year, given that it's only a month. Well, it's not easier, but it's less. You could say it's less work, given that it's only over 1 month qualifying in November and then a month qualifying in February. But the avenues that players can go down to maintain their ability at the game, but also if they don't do as well in the tournament in Barcelona or wherever the tournaments may be coming up, the Global E-Series, it enables them to have different opportunities to be able to get to that grand final.
Yeah, and as well, I was going to say, when it comes to Gfinity, there is the Challenger Series as well. So if you're a unsigned free agent that would be willing to come to London for, a couple months or every weekend for 3 months and kind of play, definitely compete in that. I think the cups start like this week, actually, and you can go ahead and play. And if you get in the top 40, you'll get put into what's called the draft. And then all 10 teams will come and draft 2 players from the Challenger Series to be a part of their Gfinity roster. So we will be involved in that. So I will definitely be keeping my eyes on the top 40 for Rocket League, Street Fighter, and FIFA. So if you fancy yourself and maybe you're kind of on the edge, or you think you could make it, but Fut Champs just isn't your thing, and maybe you think you'd be better against higher level pros, then I think the Challenger Series is definitely a proving ground for people that think that they have what it takes. And like you guys said, there's there's World Cup Grand Final spots on the line as well when it comes to finishing at the top of the Elite Series.
And for you, Sam, as well, even if fingers crossed Barcelona goes well for you, say if even Gfinity Elite Series didn't work out for you, you've still got potentially loads more opportunities this year, would you say?
Yeah, I'd assume so. Anyway, I'm pretty sure EA are giving us loads of tournaments this year. So even if Barcelona or Gfinity doesn't work out, we're still going to have a lot of stuff to play for compared to last year.
I think as well, which is a really good thing, is that we were talking about before we started the podcast, is that from Barcelona it's only 8. It's only 8 from PlayStation, 8 from Xbox to go through, so 16 there. Then at the next event, wherever that's going to be, that is 16 players again. So there's still I think there's still like 90 something left after that. Obviously, there's going to be people going through from the Club World Cup whenever that's announced, what the situation with that is. Plus, we don't know how many places Gfinity are going to give out. So, to be fair, Rich, going into this, there's going to be a lot of tournaments.
There's going to be a lot of tournaments, and there's going to be a lot of big games with a lot riding on them. That I'm looking forward, and hopefully we've got the chance to commentate over, Brandon.
So, before we close the podcast, 2017... a massive year for FIFA eSports. Obviously, the first year we broke into for myself and Richard. Even big organisations coming into it only last year.
And who knows where we'll be this time next year, after another year, with the support that it's had from the developers, EA.
Anything you want to add, Colin, before we close the podcast?
No, I mean, it's I kind of tweeted this the other day, but I think that, I don't know if you guys probably agree with this, but 2017 was probably the best year of my life. I know, like, for the people, for the world, it probably wasn't, but personally, it was definitely one of the best years of my life. Being able to join Roma and FNATIC, and the faith that they put in me, and the relationships that I've built, like with the people on this podcast, and the players that we've recruited, and all the teams and people from EA that we've met over the year. It's been an unbelievable experience, really, and I can only thank EA at the end of the day, because without them, none of this would have been possible.
So big thank you also to EA. Big thank you to anyone that listens to the podcast week in, week out. Obviously into 2018 now. I think we got a figure recently. I think we're hitting at least 1,000 or around there, 800 to 1,000, maybe even more listeners a week across all our platforms, which is fantastic to hear. Remember, we've only launched this since November, so the support so far has been absolutely fantastic. If you did enjoy the podcast, whether you listen on YouTube, over on iTunes, be sure to subscribe, like, all that good stuff, of course. And we'll be back next week with another pro Hopefully, I think, Colin, you're around, aren't you, still for a few more weeks?
Yeah, I'm pretty much free until Barcelona. So
perfect, there you go. So we'll be doing a full build-up to Barcelona, the big event. Hopefully your weekend league goes all right if you listen to this whilst you're playing, maybe. Hopefully we're bringing you a good luck, maybe scoring a goal. But remember, if you do want to get in touch, hashtag Fut Champs Podcast. We'll speak to you next week. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
If you like what you're hearing, why not subscribe? Just go to @FutChampionsPod on Twitter, drop a follow, and then you'll find all your subscription options in the pinned tweet. Oh, and also, while I've got you, why not check out this podcast's more casual older brother, the Fut Weekly Podcast, for in-depth reviews, Team of the Week rundown, content chat, and general foot discussion.